How are you guys today?
We great. We great. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. First of all, thank you for having me on the show, or thank you for the interview. And I really appreciate what you guys are doing with Still I Rise and everything you do. So thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
Yeah.
We just thank you for the interview and wow, just
Total pleasure.
connecting with us.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled. So let's do it. Where do you want to go?
Great. So again, thank you, Ron Vignone, for the interview. We really appreciate it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
You are the director of the film Two Ways Home, starring Tanna, Frederick, Tom Bauer, and Joe West, and so on.
Yes.
In the film, Tanna plays, Kathy, who is released from prison and is diagnosed with a bipolar disorder. She returns home to her family and estranged daughter. What was it like working on this film? Can you tell us a little about this?
Yeah, sure. I can tell you lots about it. I've lived it for years. Well, look, on a personal note, I try to make films that add some value back into the world. And I, do whatever I can with the craft to do that. Sometimes it's a lofty ambition. Sometimes it feels like I did something good. And the sentiment with this film, with all the cast and the crew, was the same. It was a strange kind of serendipity. We all came together around this idea of addressing people, I don't want to say suffering with, but living through mental health adversity. And they aren't, it's not a caricature of mental illness. It's not the totally marginalized in our culture, but it's the people that we are, that live with us, that in our families, amongst us, ourselves, who are dealing with a condition that is tricky to deal with in the world that we are living and what the world is becoming. And so this kind of idea of Kathy, who has this desire to, balance herself and come back and re-engage and reconnect with her family and her loved ones. It was something that somehow struck a strange chord with everybody who made the film. And it became evident as we went through the process that I don't think there was one person in our crew or in our cast that didn't have a personal experience with either themselves or family members or what have you, in terms of someone dealing with mental adversity. And it either being swept under the carpet or ignored or not dealt with in the right way, or no compassion, no empathy. And so that became kind of like the thrust behind making the film, as we were making this film and as we were telling the story. Does that make sense?
Yes. Interesting. Because when we spoke to Tanna Fredericks, she mentioned that her mother was a psychiatric nurse and her father was a pharmacist who gave meds, to severely mental ill. So that was some of her experience as far as what she brought to the set. So for you, did you have to surround yourself around individuals with bipolar disorders or dysfunctional families or mental illnesses and so forth?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up with that. And when I was growing up, which was a long time ago now, it wasn't something that we as a culture would address, talk about. It was something that was kind of like ignored, hidden. And I grew up with, I've grown up with people in my family who struggled through mental adversity. And it was, it's tricky, it's confusing. And the worst thing that could be was the unconsciousness of or ignoring it, or just, like in the film, she returns to her hometown and it's clear that her family were happier when she was gone, And so, however I can articulate that is, we all live with our conditions. We all struggle with our own adversities. And you know, the most important thing in family is to have a compassionate and empathetic connection. And yeah, I would, you know, I'm trying not to be so specific here, but the answer to your question is yes. And it's just really refreshing now in our culture that we are able to address the issues and be open about it. It's like, what's the point of closing off to that? What does that do for us? It does nothing. It actually is, you know, many steps backwards in a trail we should be forging forwards.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now
How's
let's
that?
switch gears to emotions for a moment. Now, was the film touching or emotionally challenging for you in any ways when it came to the conversations in regards to mental health?
That's a great question. Was it touching? It actually, it was healing in a lot of ways because you know, when you're able to have dialogue and bring an openness without shame to a situation, whether it's an interpersonal situation or you know, a more familial, more nuclear kind of family situation. Um, I guess the answer to that is it was touching in how similar, like I said, with the cast and the crew, how similar and how there is frequency in how many experiences like this people have had in their own life and families. So it was a connection. It was a connecting ground in terms of coming together around something which we all felt was sorely undressed and underrepresented in culture. And as we were making the film, and because it's an independent film and it takes just longer, you know, it's more of a labor of love, you know, there were years that passed by in the construction of the film. And during that time in our culture, the, you know, dealing with bipolar, borderline personality disorder, you know, clinical anxiety, all those things seem to be coming out in a way in the popular culture. I mean, greatly helped by people of notoriety coming forward and talking about that and saying there's nothing to be ashamed about here. This is what we live with, and this is you know, it's just another part of living. It's hard to talk across the entire spectrum because, you know, I'm talking about, and the film addresses someone who literally is struggling with a mental mental adversity and is not completely crippled by it or you know, paralyzed by it. And the frequency of people who do live with conditions that are just tricky in terms of their own self-worth and how they view themselves through shame, through, you know, our culture. It's in greater number than I think many people even know today. We all do on some level, right?
Yeah, yeah, and even speaking on mental health, you know, illness, I can relate to that too by having family members with mental illnesses, and I'm glad nowadays is people are more open and receptive to it. Because when we was
Absolutely.
younger, it was as if it was shame, embarrassment, and then
Hey,
you had people, we was kids,
yeah,
talking about people with mental illnesses. But when you grow up, you're like, hey, I love my loved ones, so
of
I'm gonna
course.
embrace them no matter, you know, what their mental illness is. It's nothing to be ashamed or embarrassed about it. So I'm glad
Nothing.
people are more open and, you know, open,
Receptive.
yeah, to the you know, the mental illness.
Absolutely. It's one of the few positive ways our culture has marched forward over the last 5 years. We won't go but it's good. It is good. It's great, and you know, it's a little tricky to wrap that into a narrative, you know, like a story, and not be preachy about it or not address it, you know, up front. And that's what we hope to do with this. This is a story, this is a family story. This is about a woman who comes home to reunite with her family, and you know, the conflicts and difficulties in doing that. And she just happens to also be struggling with a mental health adversity.
Yeah.
So
We saw the film. It's very nice. It's beautiful.
oh, thank you.
Yes, yes, we love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you very much. I'm so happy it worked for you guys. That's awesome.
Thank you. So the films that you produce often revolve around like real life issues and personal issues. So what made you go in that direction in regards to your career?
That's a great question. I still wonder that to this day. I'll try to give you a really honest answer that I you know, there's a part of me, probably my more idealistic part, which again wants to help people and kind of free ourselves from the chains that bind us. You know, I mean, somewhere in me there is that thing that's just about it feels great to empower people. It feels right for me to empower others as opposed to disempower others. And I think just as a life value that I try to live with that, and I struggle with it, you know, but that's what feels right to me. I think that has bled into everything I've done, you know, and every story that I gravitate to has an element of personal empowerment in some either emotional or social justice, or you know, it's all there. There's I was thinking about when I was on your site and looking at what you guys are doing with Still I Rise, I thought, oh, I've completely forgot. I did in 2019, I worked with a very close friend of mine, Alan Sitomer, on a virtual reality narrative experience for kids. And they're middle school and high school kids. And the thrust of that project, which is called Where the End Begins, is a anti-bully piece. And it's basically 9 minutes where you enter a situation that happens in a school library, and you're a bystander to an act of bullying that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and balloons in a way that, you know, something terrible happens. The idea for that was not to scare people. The idea for that was to raise consciousness about not speaking out or standing up for what you know is right, especially when you're a bystander. And that was, you know, aimed at kids at a very formidable age in their lives. And I think, oh, wow, there's a direct correlation with why I did that, why I was really interested in doing that, as there is in making this film, and as there was in making every film I made. There's a film called Say I Do, which is basically about a wedding day that goes completely wrong for all the right reasons. And it's seen through the camera of the best man who's filming this couple's wedding day. And it's a road trip, and it goes crazy, but it's basically about, you know, getting away from the trappings of a wedding and getting to the cornerstone of what is a marriage, what is a union between two people, what are the promises, what is the connection. So I mean, it's all there, it's all in the DNA. And it's interesting to look back and say, I was really fortunate to be able to make these films that I made on a very personal level that addresses, you know, my own beliefs of adding whatever value I can back into the world, giving somebody more than just entertainment, something to take home with them. That's been my goal. I don't know if I can sustain that in in reality, but you know, it's like that's what I've committed a large part of my artistic life to. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Was any of those instilled in you as a youth while you was growing up by your parents, or any, you know, just people, mentors or anything, that's, or you feel like it's just natural just to give,
I,
and, you know?
I mean, I was the son of parents who were much older than me. Um, I came around definitely as an accident. Let's put it that way. Uh, you know, my dad was born in 1918 and my mom in 1921. So, you know, it was like having grandparents for parents. And both of them were really kind people. They were really fair and just and kind. But they, you know, they were from a different generation, literally a different generation, completely and totally. But I think that their kindness, their human kindness, and their I think that they felt that it was important that they were in service to humanity, on a very on whatever level they could be. I think that probably was instilled in me. And then, you know, as I had much older brothers who were in great part, um, you know, they were kind of parental figures, but they were in great part in their own conflict with their natural conflict with their parents. And that was kind of like a, uh, um, you know, just what a normal 18 to 25-year-old would be like in terms of individuating and becoming their own person. But it rubbed up against this idea of personal service that they kind of embodied in the way they lived. And I think I chose the latter. I think I chose, you know, I learned from that. I modeled that in my life. I try to do that with my children. I try to do that in my life. And, you know, sometimes successful, sometimes not. What can I tell you? But it's the trying, I think, that counts.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought it was very interesting. When we was researching, I read
Yeah.
several of your articles, interviews. I came across where after college, you saved your last penny, you bought a one-way ticket to Paris.
Where did you find that? It's amazing. Where did you find that? That was an interview I gave a long time ago. That was amazing. Yeah.
You was willing to take that sacrifice. Why did you make that choice? Because that's like, wow, like not many people would do that, to go across to another country and start a new life. And
Yeah,
yeah, you believed in something. And well,
I did.
well,
I believed. Look, it's a complicated, long story. I'll try to make it short. But
it's
I'm amazed
inspiring.
you found
Yeah,
that.
it's inspiring. Yes.
You know, it was a time in my life that I was young. I had very lofty ideas of how I'd like to be a filmmaker, how I'd like to live my life. And, you know, those times living abroad was a very kind of seductive thing. It was really like the idea of leaving behind your country and going embracing another culture was really tasty for me. It was really sexy, you know. It was like, I gotta do that. I gotta be an expat. And I was living, and I lived in Spain, and it was cool. And I fell in love with this girl, and it was fast and furious, and it was clear to both of us that if we continued down this path, that, you know, that would be the life that we were going to lead. And I think both of us had we're just young, you know. It's kind of like we're love, but at the same time you have these ambitions that you want to just go out and bite life, conquer the world, do stuff. And so it was a very, I've never experienced anything like it since. It's, I mean, been married for 25 years. It's like, it was, I had to just give it all up. And I sold everything I had, and I had this dream of becoming a filmmaker in Paris, which was ridiculous. Because it's like if Hollywood is an insular place, Paris is 10 times as insular. But it was still cool. It was a cool idea as a young American male filmmaker to go and try and do this. So, you know, I sold everything I had and I bought a one-way ticket. I had nothing, no money. And it was like, wow, I really have done this now. And I didn't even speak French. And, you know, I had to get a job, and it taught me a lot. It taught me a hell of a lot. I did anything I could, and I ended up working construction with these guys, these old French guys who have been doing this, you know, for many years, and I had to gain their respect. It was really hard to gain these guys. I was good with my hands. I was really good with my hands. I was able to work on these buildings that were, you know, from even back to the 14th, 15th century. It was wild. But these guys would not, I couldn't get the respect, right? Until I found out that in order to do that, I needed to show up at the cafe about 6:30 in the morning and drink a double espresso with them and what's called a pastis, which is a pretty strong liqueur. And that's how they'd start their day. Okay.
Wow.
And I'm not much of a drinker at all, but that's what I had to do with these guys. And when I started doing this ritualistic thing with them in the morning, suddenly I was part of their family. And I was able to make money. And, you know, went on from there to figure out that I could teach advanced conversational English to business people because I could just speak to them and make 5 times what I was making doing construction. So,
wow.
It was a crazy time, but it was great. You know, it was like, those are the things that I'm looking back. I'm so happy I did that because it's, you know, don't wait until the end of your life to go travel and do something like that. Do it, you know, when you can. If you have to sleep on the street or find the worst possible situation, you will make it through that. You'll deal with that and make it through because you're young and you can, you know. It was a great time. I'm amazed you found that.
Yes. I thought it was fascinating. I'm like, wow,
cool.
not too many people would do that.
Wow. It was wild.
Yeah.
It was wild. It was a year of wild. I mean, off the hook, but it was so good. You know, I love Paris and I love Europe. I love it there. I think it's just a great place. Haven't been for years now, but it's very close to my heart.
Nice.
Very nice. So let's move to inspiration.
Okay.
What words of encouragement would you share with upcoming filmmakers that's looking to be as successful as yourself?
Oh, well, that's very kind. First of all, I'll share some words of inspiration in hopes that young filmmakers are more successful than I am at this point. Okay. And I mean, look, the words of inspiration I think I have, or the best words I can say, the most empowering thing I can say is, you know, the power is in story. It really is. It is all in story. And, you know, story craft and story muscle is different than literary muscle, like and you know, your ability to express yourself in words in terms of a thought and idea. I'm talking about, you know, telling a story which and the ability to tell a story which gives you the kind of freedom, and I don't want to use the word power, but I have to, the freedom and power to make a difference. And that is both in terms of the narrative that the audience you're reaching, and also your personal power in an industry that is difficult to navigate. I mean, they all are, but the key is story, and it's to learn that craft and to develop that story muscle. You know, it's not just about filming stuff, it's about really understanding what are the mechanics of story and and to become a craftsman at understanding the tent poles of story, and then being able to express it with a sort of real passion that you can find in your own life and parallels with that story. Does that work for you? I mean, you know, otherwise I'd say we're living in, you know, a golden age. You know, it's like everybody can get a camera, everybody can use their iPhone. Very successful people have told amazing films that have reached our living rooms and on the screen through an iPhone, which is amazing, amazing. So, you know, and then what's happening with women in the industry now, it's incredible. You know, it's like the women have a tremendous amount of power that they didn't have before. And we're watching incredibly, I mean, great stories come from women directors and women writers in volume that has never been before. So it's, I mean, it's a great time to be creating story and film and media. It's wonderful. And we've got this thing, the internet, which is, we still haven't embraced it fully. The fact that we have, you know, billions of people as a potential audience, and you can tap into it, you know, by just hitting enter. It's incredible. So you know, it's like it's a great time to be making films. It's a great time to be making television, long form, episodic, or even just short pieces for connecting with other people and connecting to with a purpose, to have a career or to further your work or to make bigger and better things. So it's just like, just do it, you know, but learn story. Don't just do it in terms of, I'm gonna film something and do it. We see that every day. You know, learn the power, the real hidden power that story has, because the people who do it at the highest level understand the power of story. And we all can. We all know it because we dream it, we live it, it's the way we talk to each other through story and, you know, experience life. But to understand how to really create through narrative is very important, and it should be on the top list of things that people do in terms of making films.
Wow, that's some great advice. When you started when you started filmmaking, I know you just mentioned the iPhone. I know you was asking yourself, what was this iPhone at when I started filmmaking?
There was no iPhone when I started. There was none. It's like there's no such thing, you know. You see Super 8 cameras, you know, Super 8 cameras, 16mm cameras, and then along came the video camera, and it was like, wow, this is cool, but nothing like this. I mean, this is just, this is incredible.
So you seen a transformation, like,
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I mean, when I used to do in the earlier part of my career, when I was at Sony, we were doing well, it doesn't matter. Any film that we do there, it was on film. I mean, film was just, there was no digital, or if there was, it wasn't really used for digital cinema. So there was a huge transition between film and digital, and I've lived through that and embraced it, and I think it's terrific. It's just great.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And Ron, before we end the interview, would you like to mention anything else about Two Ways Home, or like to add anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to share?
That's very kind. Of course, I'd love people to come visit our website and see the film. It's www.twowayshomemovie.com, and you can see the trailer there. You can click out to any number of places where the platforms that it's currently playing. And I just thank you so much for the interview. I guess I would like to really say, for anybody interested in seeing some fabulous acting, Tanna, Tom Bauer, Joel West, Riley Bear, and everybody else, they all brought it together. They all brought it for this film in their own very personally tied in ways. And it was a really unique experience and an honor to work with everybody who made the film. The cast, the crew, and the city of Mason City, Garner, Iowa, the Midwest were very kind to us. So it's a film that hopefully exudes some love.
Yes, it's a great film. We love it. We love it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you so very much for this interview, really. And I really am inspired by what you guys are doing. It makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. So that's really
I thought I wasn't doing enough. I'm looking at Ron, I'm looking at your catalog like, wow. If I film, I'm like, wow, that's what I need to be doing.
It's very kind. That's very kind.
Yeah.
That's very
Thank you too. It's been great. Thank you
guys. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Okay, you too. All righty. Okay, bye-bye.
Hold your head up high to the sky, so high as the days go by. I promise everything is gonna be